All right, we're heading out to do a podcast with John Shipp, Mr. Film here in Kansas City. So let's see how it goes.
Welcome to the mayhem. Dick and Loy mayhem. Media mayhem. Marketing a mayhem. You might love it, you might hate it. It's my favorite freaking show.
Loy, introduce our guest.
Dick, anything about film in Kansas City, it points to our guest, John Shipp, who is, gosh, John, what? You're known as the film peddler.
The film peddler.
That's right.
That was a self-appellation because motion picture distribution has always been one of my loves. In the 70s, when I had my own distribution company after I worked for MGM for 8 or 9 years, that's how I still think of myself, even though for the last 30, 35 years I've worked from the other angle, the exhibition perspective instead of the distribution perspective, you know.
Wow.
But life is sweet, yeah.
You know, you've had a sweet life. There's a lot of terms there that we need to look into. First off, Film Row, what does that mean to Kansas City? What does that term mean?
Well, historically, the motion picture industry, domestic theatrical here, USA and Canada, has maintained around 32 different areas of the country where they had their film exchanges as such, where Paramount opened up, Columbia, MGM, Fox, Disney, et cetera, et cetera. They had their offices there, and along with the distribution offices would come all of the suppliers, the popcorn people, the seats people, the projection people, the ticket people. The entire industry would locate in a small area that would allow exhibitors from these little towns in Kansas, Missouri to come to town and to make their deals in a finite area. So the Film Row area in Kansas City, Missouri specifically is the nexus of it is 18th and Wyandotte. Mm-hmm. So you can just kind of go in that little area around there, and that's where everybody was located. Everybody. I mean, that is Film Row. And around the country, because of gentrification and just the changes in real estate values, there's practically no other Film Row areas that have as many of their original buildings extant now as Kansas City does. So we're one of the few really surviving Film Row areas where we still got MGM, their building, Fox's building, Universal's building, Columbia, et cetera, et cetera. So Film Row that's where you went to buy your film and buy your popcorn.
Would they send the films there for distribution to the theaters?
Yes.
Okay.
The film shippers right here, it would have been, actually we had our own little company called Independent Film Shippers back in the 70s because we were dealing in a lot of volume. But the studios maintain a huge collection of their physical prints right here because of the central location. Kansas City, and the interesting thing about Old Film Row here in Kansas City, that it appears that our Film Row was one of the first ones in the country. And it would have started maybe as long ago as around the turn of the 19th century, around 1898 to 1902 in that area. There would have been some people who were exchanging films with other little theaters because, you know, after you play it a week, it's pretty much your audience has seen it back then.
Holy cow, what kind of a film would have been in existence at that time?
You know,
Sally ran fan dance on a...
Yes, among other things, exactly. It would have been...
Who was a Kansas City?
Well, Kansas City's production industry would have been a little bit later than the exhibition part of it. But if you want to get into that and some of the early history here, we've got a couple of fascinating characters who are absolutely iconic figures that no one has ever heard of.
Really?
Yeah. In 1904, here in Kansas City, Missouri, there was a retired fire chief by the name of, give me just a second, George C. Hale, Captain George C. Hale. He had traveled the world representing Kansas City's fire department. I mean the entire world. He had won these international awards for innovations in fighting fires. He developed these special ladders, all kinds of special equipment that allowed people to get these fires out quicker, and he was a really greatly well-known guy in that particular end of it. But he came across someone who had an idea and then got together another idea, and they developed something called Hale's touring cars. And what it is, they started with a Pullman train car, right here in Kansas City. It would seat around 70 people. They put a little screen at one end of it. They set it up on gimbals, and speaking of gimbals, and
gimbals on the
Macy's
camera,
too,
yes.
yeah, set it up that way. They had sound effects on the outside, and in the front of the, just say that this is the Pullman car, right in the front right there, they would be showing footage of different cities from around the world. But while people were sitting in their chairs watching them in their things, there would be people outside who would be doing sound effects. Like if you were looking at this travel log thing for Switzerland, you'd be going up the mountains and you would hear the creak, 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 and then the whistle of this and the horn blowing and the absolutely. You're exactly right, man. You're exactly right. But what happened was after
Early
he introduced it,
work.
the first one that was used, that was shown, was at the World's Fair of the St. Louis Exposition in 1904. But he came back to Kansas City, of course, and refined it. And in 1906, I believe it was, at Electric Park, he opened up one that was actually a twin. I mean, he had a 70-seater here and right behind it another one. But they built a huge facade for it, and it was an instant smash hit at Electric Park, which again, if you guys know the history of Electric Park, fascinating place. It was Electric Park that caused Walt Disney to come up with Disney World, or Disneyland, I should say, his very first one. And he borrowed so much from Electric Park. It's just unbelievable.
And it was right off the east of the plaza, was it, Electric Park, or east
I think
of
it was
out
around
here?
40th and a Prospect, or around there. There were actually two Electric Parks. The original one was built next to the Heim Brothers Brewery, which at the time...
Down the River Market area, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. But at this time, this was in the late 1800s, it was the largest brewery in the world. So they had it there for a few years and just outgrew the space and ended up opening it up separately. But while they had it there, I read somewhere that they had a direct line going from the brewery to there, so they could ship the beer over as it was brewed all the way to people to be drinking it there.
Unbelievable.
And that was Electric Park, mind you. So this city is so full of history. But back to George Hale and his touring cars. Within a few years, within 4 or 5 years, there were over 500 locations for these touring cars. You know, he sold the rights for Great Britain for like $20,000, which back then, 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago, hell, it was a whole lot of money. People like Adolph Zucker, who was the founder of Paramount Pictures, people like Louis Mayer, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, these guys at the time were running little either Nickelodeons or penny arcades in New York City and thereabouts. When they heard of this thing, they grabbed a hold of it. And the bottom line is, this Hale's touring cars for a few years had this fabulous run around the world: Beijing, Mexico City, Europe, South America, you name it. They were located all over the world, and they did fantastic business for a short period of time. But it was essentially like this was the linchpin between penny arcades and Nickelodeons, and people have never even heard about this.
That is a
fabulous
fascinating story. And has anybody ever done a documentary where they've replicated this scene?
And quite frankly,
it's unbelievable.
Well, yeah, it is. It's just one tiny segment, man. And at the time, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, when I first started coming across this and everything, well, my initial thought was, we've got to do this in Union Station. What a perfect permanent exhibit you'd have.
Yeah.
And instead of Switzerland or Berlin, we'd be showing Kansas City and all of its great attractions for the area like that. But again, it's so easy to have. We got thousands of ideas. So easy to have those ideas, but carrying them through to fruition is a different story. So no, we've never been able to do anything about it. But what a wonderful subject that would be for some type of a documentary.
Sure would be. Yeah.
Well, I have a feeling you got a lot of these stories. You know more about film history, I think, probably.
No, not really. It's just I'm older, man. I'm so old and I've lived through these things like that, so it appears that I do. But no, there are much more, much more articulate and much more knowledgeable people about.
They can't be more
down
articulate.
In the weeds.
You started back at what was MGM?
Started with MGM as a student booker at $62.50 a week in Memphis, Tennessee, in 1963, as a matter of fact. It's been fun every fucking step of the way. It's been fun. That's always been kind of my guiding light and everything is to have fun, to enjoy yourself.
Have you ever veered outside of the film world to make a buck?
Well,
or have you always just stayed on that track somehow or another?
Making a buck has just never been one of my priorities. I'm between fortunes right now. Probably will be for a while. It's just never been a priority. For me, what's always been fun is not the thrill of the chase, but it's coming up with something that looks like it makes sense, that you can help make happen if you can get the right people together, and then moving from there.
Sure.
It's how we started. It's how we started Cinema KC 10 or 12 years ago. It's how we started Thank You Walt Disney, Butch and me, and actually John Hart.
John Hart
was one of the original guys on there. In fact, John had the original idea of doing a statue of Walt Disney. He called Butch. This would have been 25 years ago. He called Butch because he knew Butch was a Disney thing, and we were working on a little documentary on young Walt Disney at the time, which Butch never finished. Lobster. So John called Butch and said, "Hey man, come on! No one has ever honored Walt Disney here in his own home. What are we going to do?" So then Butch immediately called me, of course, because we worked together on the film stuff. The big money stuff, we didn't work together. That was all his. He made the big money. I worked on the not-for-profit stuff that never made a penny off of, that cost us thousands of dollars. So, which is what we wanted. Okay.
You're a business spender. Is what
Well, now wait a minute. You apparently, I heard that you made $22 million distributing independent films.
Where is that money?
I did, but
John?
that was then and this is now. That was in the 70s when I handled films like Harper Valley PTA and the original Halloween and Toby Haliki's Gone in 60 Seconds. What a character. You know that Disney did a remake of it starring Nicolas Cage on Gone in 60 Seconds, but the original one that Toby Haliki made, have you guys ever even heard of it?
No.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, you must. Absolutely fabulous film.
Yeah.
But that's a long story, but a good one. Back in the 70s, we were very fortunate because the company that I had, Thomas and Shipp Films, which I just incorporated my name after I bought the company from Howard Thomas, who was retiring, had a fabulous lady, Mary Hayslip, who was our office manager and handled all the tough stuff, and just had a great crew of people. And we were fortunate enough to be able to open some offices in St. Louis and Des Moines. And for about 8 or 10 years, we were pretty dominant in the independent distribution end of it.
You were booking those things all over the place.
Well, mostly just in a couple of thousand theaters in central part of the country.
Okay.
We handled the exchange areas of St. Louis, Kansas City, Des Moines, Omaha, and then there were other people like me who had, Dallas, Chicago, New York, Jacksonville, Denver, whatever. But Roger Corman was one of the guys that I made a whole lot of money with. We invested money in these things, and Roger had some of these great drive-in exploitation movies. And we cut a pretty fat hog back in the 70s like that.
Was there ever a Roger Corman movie without cleavage?
I'm going to take that as a no.
I don't think so.
I'm trying to. I don't remember one. It was mostly. I'm not sure if this is G-rated, but it's mostly fighting and fucking. That was kind of the. And I used to be told by various people that work with Roger that when he was looking at a screenplay like that, if three pages went by without some fighting and fucking, he said, fix it. Three pages max, man.
Rewrite.
You got to wake up those guys in the back of the drive-in theater like that.
Yeah.
But we had a fabulous run, had fabulous times. I ended up my character is sometimes and my ethics and morals just aren't as strong as they could be, and I got involved in all the coke snorting, dope taking, limousine driving, Concord flying, Cannes Film Festival. I got in the middle of all that stuff. Oh,
well, that's disgusting.
And I just ended up.
Terminate this interview.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. Small children don't listen. Yes.
No. Okay.
That's
so
something.
I mean, but even in the middle of all of it and everything, we had such a great group of people working that we kept going. If I hadn't have gotten involved in trying to produce the films that Roger was doing and others, I'd probably still be peddling film, but maybe not.
Yeah.
But what happened was we put together a little limited partnership here in maybe 75 or 76 to make a little film called The Student Body, which we made here in Kansas City, which actually we came out okay on it. But then on the Super Van, 2 or 3 years later, I went so far over my skis, I think someone used that term.
Super van, yes.
In that particular film, my cash, and then the major companies started going after the stuff that I needed, like oh golly, the Burt Reynolds chase things, Smokey and the Bandit.
Smokey and the Bandit, yeah.
These Last House on the Left type films like that. The ones that were our bread and butter as such, the majors started handling. And the bottom line is, in the latter part of 1980, I mean, I was just, I was really screwed up emotionally, physically, mentally, in every way. Companies were going belly up. Oh, and fool that I was, I saw myself as someone that, okay, I'll just get away for a few years and I'll come back and we'll just kick ass again. And figured that's how life worked, you know, because I'd been so naive and I made so much money in such a short period of time, you know. I mean, it was just more money than you could spend almost. So I jumped in my car with my nose full of coke and headed down south. Finally hit the coast, I guess, maybe in Mobile, and traveled on around, kept on traveling down that coast. Ended up at the end of St. Pete Beach, Florida, at a little area there that's called Pass-A-Grill. Hundreds of years earlier, it had been used, the beaches there had been used to smoke fish. It was the pass of the grillers. They would stick their fish on there and then take them back to Cuba after they'd been smoked in the sun. But there was this little pier there and a little bait shop and charter boat service around there. And so I went in and rented a rod and reel and went out there and sat on the edge of that pier and was listening to the birds chirping, flying overhead, and the halyards banging against a couple of the sailboats and this. And I says, man, this is really a nice place. So I went in there, and this old guy that owned it was a guy named Dutch. It was owned by the city of St. Pete Beach, leased to him. But he said, I said, hey, you want to sell this thing? He said, yeah. You know, so I said, how much? He said, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000, whatever it was. It was nothing at the time, you know, even though, so I said, yeah, let's do it, you know. So that's where I ended up settling for a couple of years.
Wow.
And had fabulous times, unfreaking believable
John's
times.
living the Jimmy Buffett life.
Yeah.
That's what he is. Yeah.
Living and
So
dying
tell
in
us about the
three-quarter
good times.
time.
I mean, let's talk about the good
man.
times a little bit.
Okay, good times. Had a little 20-foot Robalo open fisherman with, I don't know, maybe 150 Merc on the back to, and a little extra kicker, of course. And me and a couple of my mullet buddies, or the people that hung around the shop, you know, we'd go and we'd catch a few little stingrays and then some other little fish, but we'd catch these little stingrays and use them for shark fishing. So we'd take the boat out in the afternoon as it was getting ready to have these incoming tides. And we'd hook up a couple of rigs on the back, these big old 10, 11-aught pin rigs, I've forgotten, huge things for shark fishing. And we'd put one high and one low, and then we'd sit back there and we'd roll a number, and we'd turn on either Buffett or the Stones, you know, and we'd sit there and smoke, and you just wait for that click, 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 because when the shark, before they would grab that bait, they would normally brush up against it. They could tell somehow with their skin whether it was edible or not by brushing up against it. So when they would do that click, 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 then you would immediately kind of come out of your Buffett haze and say, whoa, wait a minute. You stand up there, then you'd wait again, a little click, click, click. Okay, and then finally, click, 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 and you'd jump up and you'd grab that thing as hard as you could, bam, and try to set it. Try to set that thing, you know, and that hook in that hard shark mouth. And the fight would be on. I was a lousy fisherman. I was even a lousier boat captain. I tell you, man, I just never got I just never learned how to drive a boat properly. I was always running into piers and docks and sand and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, those were joyous times. We would float in on that incoming tide. We'd always catch and release unless we were going to be eating them.
Yeah.
But there's a guy. There were so many people that hung around that bait shop area, and they were from every walk of life. You're talking about a disparate group, man. They were, you know, doctors, lawyers, you know, bums. There were three different people named Eddie who hung around. There was window washer Eddie, there was dredger Eddie, and then there was Two Dick Eddie. Okay, Two Dick Eddie, big old fat guy, always had his T-shirt on, and he had a navel that was an Audi that would stick out like that on his T-shirt, and that's why we called him Two Dick, to differentiate himself. And he has some unbelievable stories too about taking these little 12-foot sailboats around the South American Cape right there, and oh man, all kinds of lies and stories. But he could cook unbelievably. So what would happen? These big longliners would come in there to fill up with diesel or gas. And these longliners, if you know about them, they would set up miles and miles of line behind them, and it would take them like hours to go back and check for the swordfish. And by the time they checked the early sets on the lines and everything, sometimes some of the swordfish would have been attacked by sharks. They might have taken a big bite out of them, so they wouldn't be able to sell them at the fish market. So what would happen was they would still bring them in, they'd cut out around that big shark bite, and they would stake those darn things out. So they would trade us the swordfish steaks. We would go in and get some fresh shrimp and trade them some shrimp or some gas, whatever. But then we'd catch a few little sheep's head or flounder or gag grouper off the end of the pier, and we'd get some of our frozen squid that we sold for bait, some of those shrimp, some of that, and Two Dick Eddie would start chopping up that ginger and those herbs and spices and make up this huge pot of our own Paso Grill bouillabaisse that was just only better I've had was in the south of France, as a matter of fact, when it comes to bouillabaisse. Wow. Wonderful stuff. But those were fun. But probably the top memories had to do with the space shuttle launches that I went to there. 3 different times, number 1, number 3, and number 5. And guys, stop me, please. Stop me. I mean, if you want, if I start veering off.
Well,
no, that's fine.
Veering off is good.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I love Stream of Consciousness with John Shipp is a fun ride.
It is.
Okay.
I'm buckled in.
One of my old buddies, Bill was a mullet fisherman. And if you've ever seen the mullet boats, Bill Miller, how could I forget that? The mullet boats, you would stand in the front of this maybe 20-foot wooden boat with a kicker in the middle right there, and you would be standing up in the prow of the boat, like holding on to something like this, or if you had a console, and you'd be like this guy going into battle on the top of an elephant, and that's why Bill loved it. I think it was the romance of that. But Bill said, "Man, they're getting ready to launch the first space shuttle. I would love to go to that." And he said, I know the address of the NASA publicity, marketing, advertising, whatever it was called, headquarters in Washington, D.C. He said, but I don't know how to go about doing it. And I said, "Oh, come on, man, it's easy. We'll do a little documentary about the space shuttle launch, and maybe we'll be able to sell some footage to one of the TV stations around here. But it'll be really simple." So I went down to the printing place nearby, and we did some Paso Grill Productions, put it on the nice letterhead, with the names of, this guy was the director, the producer, you name it.
Yeah.
But we had a list of like
Two Dick Eddie.
Catering to Dick Eddie.
We had like 10 or 12 of us, that I put on the stationery, sent it out to NASA. Sure enough, man, they wrote back and said, "Yes, sir, we're happy to. We'll give you your press credentials, and everything." Wow. So we rented a big old RV and took a few kegs and cases of beer because everybody was big drinkers back then. And we headed out across the state of Florida to either Kennedy or Canaveral. I forgot what it was called back then. And of course, the first space shuttle shot was really an amazing media event for the entire world. I mean, there were TV crews from all over the world attending that. But we went through the line and we got our credentials. So here's a group of people in cut-off shorts and no socks and a T-shirt. And we had one of those little yellow underwater cameras was the only camera we had because everything else fell out. So we didn't get a lot of good shots. But the experience the night before the launch, which usually took place 5, 6, 7 o'clock early in the morning, the night before the launch, you got these thousands of media people from all over the world that are on the infill there. They had some stands there. They have the countdown clock, a digital countdown clock between you and the Columbia sitting there getting ready to go up. And then over to the left was the vehicle assembly building, which is the largest building, I think, enclosed in the world. We toured that. So here we are, a group of crazy fishermen, who knew nothing about anything, just having a great time walking around with everybody with all these thousands of huge cameras, this and that. And during the entire time that you're there, you see these police people with their dogs, and they're walking around just everywhere, sniffing around. And then you see these other people clicking, taking, because back then you didn't even have digital, as I recall. It was just click. And we found out later they were taking pictures of everybody because they had a blackout tent and everything that they would compare those faces to any known terrorist type thing. So we cleared that. when we got hungry, we would just go to one of the networks. They had these trailers set up with a line of food through there, a buffet, and you didn't have to ID yourself, so we ate free. And we collected all this printed material from all these different companies from all over the world that were involved in one facet or another of the production of the thing. So, and I'll try to hurry this up. Okay, but back to number one again. When it was actually delayed a day or two, and we had to come back. But let's just say, okay, they got that countdown going on the infield clock there. The 0, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. By the time it got to 1 or 2 seconds, you see this big round puff of smoke at the bottom of this thing. It's gray at first. And then a second later, the sound hits you, bam, like that. I mean, it hits you, it just immerses you. You're just sitting there just vibrating with the sound, and then that gray turns to gold and yellow and orange and just starts spreading out like this, and that big beast just starts going straight up in the air like that. And everybody is screaming and yelling so much you can't hear anything with the sound, but everybody is just rejoicing the fact America did it right, because we were doing a lot of things wrong back then, unlike now. Oh God. But those were thrilling experiences to go to those things. My brother-in-law, Bob Nelson, from either Indianapolis or Tampa at the time, wanted to go, so we included family members at later ones. But on the one that Bob went to, right before the countdown, he went and walked up right next to the digital readout clock with the countdown clock, and he was wearing like red, green, blue, white, a really colorful outfit there, just standing there by it. And the next week, when Newsweek or Time came out, they had a double truck page of the blowout, and he was standing there right at the end of it. Like, wow. It was funny.
So you kind of got back into film, generally, through that photojournalistic endeavor or whatever. I mean, you were out fishing, and you kind of got pulled
Something
back
brought you off the dock.
Well, what brought me off the dock was the no-name storm of the summer of, I think, 1983 or 84. Quite frankly, it's still a little foggy back there. But we had it essentially blew my bait shop into Boca Ciega Bay there, which is where we were located, right? Boca Ciega Bay leading right into the Gulf like that, and totally wiped out. Put what I had in storage, and I think that was the time that I went down to Key West for about a year, and because I'd come into a little small windfall enough to keep me fishing all. Key West, a fabulous place. I'm sure you guys know it and have been there many times. What you got there that I always enjoyed, walking drunken down Duval there, going to the Bull and going on down the line there. But the mixture of the gay crowd there, the artistic crowd there, the conks, the people that were born there.
The chickens. The roosters run around.
Loved that early in the morning, man. Driving around, every block had its own little rooster. Used to love that crowing in the morning like that. Yeah, and then you got you got all these fishing communities, and then the touristas mostly from Germany and Canada that were coming down there, and you got this wonderful meld, this wonderful mixture of all these nationalities and cultures and societies coming together right there in that one little place.
Back in those days, it was really magic, wasn't it?
Yeah. Magic's a good word for it.
It was unbelievable.
I was there on a cruise a couple of times and rented a bicycle and rode all over the place. So it's a great place.
I didn't have a car when I was living down there because that's all you needed is a bicycle.
Yeah.
And it's a great place. The same thing in New York City, as a matter of fact. When I was living in the West Village there, I didn't have a car or a bicycle, but hell, New York, one of the great walkable cities in the world. Fabulous, fabulous place. Loved it.
Well, we're in this room here we're surrounded by film posters, and we're in a cool space, one of Butch Rigby's developments at 601 East 63rd Street. And in the room, we've got, I'm assuming you have some kind of connection to the films that are posters up here.
Well,
right?
it's a peripheral connection with a lot of them because Butch and I have been collecting movie memorabilia for the last 25, 35, 40 years. And we've got he's got his collection of many thousands. I've got my collection of many thousands. These are just some that happen to be at the top that I put on the wall because it was handy.
So no special connection here between these?
Not really.
Look around at these. Tell us about some of these films that you have some memories attached to them. We've got Kansas City Bomber here. We've got a lot of local.
Well, I would rather talk about the connection with those three posters right there, which we did when we were having Film Fest Kansas City at on the plaza. No, Cinemark on the plaza right there. I forget, darn it, I wish I remembered the agency that did those for us. But a lot of these are just some that, again...
and what year was that?
Oh, man, I don't know. I'm guessing 20 years ago, but, but there's one on the corner there that I have a very special connection to. Oh, now there's Film Fest Kansas City 2000. And Film Fest Kansas City is now called Kansas City Film Fest International. I think they've expanded the scope and the draw of it.
Well, tell us about that. Tell us about Film Fest and
Well,
how all that came to be.
Film Fest, when we started the Film Society of Greater Kansas City, I think around 28 years ago, I think around 91 maybe, we started it. It was following the Robert Altman Film Festival.
Wow.
The Film Commission here of Kansas City, the Greater Kansas City Film Commission, I wasn't a member, but Lou Vaughn, one of my buddies, was a member, and he was in California most of the time, so I attended the meetings with him, and I ended up, John Altman and I ended up becoming the chairman of the Robert Altman Film Festival, and we brought about 22 or 24 of Bob Altman's movies into, it was actually the Crown Center Theater at the time, and had a festival for several days, brought Bob Altman in, gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award, which was kind of cool, and got, I don't know, he signed so many autographed posters for us of the thing. I don't have one up here right now. But because of that, we realized that, you know what, we probably should develop some type of a vehicle that would allow us to have some type of annual film festival. And that's how the idea started. But people like Carol Barta, Butch Rigby, of course, and myself, and quite a few others, M.L. Bass, Susan Lawrence, just a lot of great people came together. We met month after month and finally ended up setting up that not-for-profit called the Film Society of Greater Kansas City. Talked to Jerry at the Tivoli and said we want to do our first meeting there. So we went in this big auditorium that seated, I think, 180, filled that up and had another couple hundred people waiting, had to move to a different one. And really, for many years, man, that little not-for-profit, we brought in so many filmmakers and we developed Film Fest Kansas City out of that. But that's how the festival got started, and it was, and it's still going. The Film Society is still going. That's still going. Cinema KC. So thank you, Walt Disney.
Bob Altman.
Pardon?
You got to know Robert, and then the other family member you mentioned.
Oh, John Altman. John's a local guy, and he's done a whole lot of stuff. You probably met John before.
John, sure.
Back in the 70s, when I had my office at, oh man, what is that address? It was a building there in Westport where Asiatica was. Ron Rook's record shops.
Right. Music Exchange.
Music Exchange.
Ryan,
we were on the second floor there. Joe Service owned that building, and Joe is still one of my closest buddies. We still have breakfast Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday of every week. Every week.
Cup, I believe.
At the Cup with Joe.
I've seen you guys around.
Yeah. Well, why the hell didn't you come over and say hello, man? I mean,
I walked by and waved.
Oh, okay, yeah. And Butch is there Wednesday and Friday. So we've got our own little niche. I just got a little while ago. Actually, a couple hours ago, got a text from a buddy of mine at XWA, which I go to occasionally, and he said Brian Cranston's been here for the last 2 hours, and he said drinking coffee, and I said cool, it's breaking beans, right? Yeah. So a few minutes after that, he texted back and says, no, it's not Brian. Brian, it's Chris Cooper.
Oh, Chris Cooper,
who lives here locally,
sure.
of course, and so
does Chris still live here?
Mistake.
In the area?
I don't believe so.
No.
I haven't spoken to him in many years, many years, since he won his Academy Award, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But his mom was here and had a whole lot of family here, and a lot of our people, like Ann McFerrin, went to school with him. I think maybe, you guys know Lonnie Shelton? You're into baseball, right? Aren't you?
Little bit.
I thought I saw you with the...
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I know a little bit about it.
Lonnie does a newsletter about baseball, politics, and history here in Kansas City that is absolutely fascinating. That if you're interested in Kansas City political history, he and some other attorney, Mike White and Pocinelli, started Pocinelli, White, and Shelton, which is still a huge law firm, as you know. And he does a fantastic newsletter. That if you are interested, let me know and I'll forward it to you, and he'll put you on his list. But got great political history.
Talk to me about another thing I see here, poster. 69 minutes.
Oh, isn't that embarrassing?
There's
It's
a
just
lot of
horrible.
local older people in the city who, as young people, were in that movie.
I love the way you struggle with not using the word talent when you said local, and then you hesitated to not say local talent. And that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Well, Jack Posinger was the executive producer of it, and Jack still does. Jack Goes to the Movies.
Sure.
And has been around many, many years, and is
Yeah.
a fabulous fella, one of my dearest
He
buddies.
writes some things for Hearn's.
Yeah, he does.
Website,
He does.
Blog.
Yeah.
That he does. Lou Jane Temple, and Lou Jane I saw a couple of weeks ago, and she's published 10 books now. I think she
Yeah.
said 10
All
novels.
right.
But
She does
Lou,
mysteries related to food.
yeah.
Very popular
and
stuff.
Lou Jane, as I recall, was kind of one of the progenitors of the Westport area. I mean, she was down there in I think the 60s, really before it started.
Down in the
taking
Westport
off.
trucker era.
Yes, as a
She
matter
was
of
down
fact.
there,
She
of
and
course.
Sal Capra and some of those other old timers. Sal Capra, what a sweet man. Too bad he's gone. He was an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Sal was my general partner on a couple of the
is that
productions.
right?
He was my general partner
Okay.
on Student Body and Superman. But this film, 69 Minutes, was a spoof on 60 Minutes, the radio show. Joe Leahy, who is a very talented voiceover guy, was one of the producers and acted in it. And, we sat around. A guy named Ian Morrison directed it. Ian's claim to fame was a movie that he had made earlier called Slimetown Blues, that when we premiered it at the Midland Theater downtown, we had put some bumper stickers for a slime job come to the Midland Theater. Stan Durwood saw those on some car and said, "Get those things off. I don't want to see a slime job at the Midland Theater." So we took the bumper stickers off, but when we had the premiere on this film, Slimetown Blues, we gave away free turkeys. We had turkeys in these little wooden crates out front of the theaters, and the glasses that we gave people, were not transparent because it was, if you watched it, it was so bad it would bother you. But that was the big payoff scene in that particular film. I remember Ian telling me this. Yeah, we had this old station wagon, man, and we were going to run it up this hill and then crash it, and that was going to be the denouement, even though he didn't use that word. So they shot the scene, fabulous. Checked the cameras, no film in the camera, so they lost that film.
Oh, my.
That was kind of the way the production
Okay.
went, and it's kind of the way this film went right there. 69 minutes.
69. Well, I remember my buddy Katey McGuckin was in it.
Oh,
I think.
Katie was great.
She
yeah.
brings it up
Yeah.
an awful lot.
You're kidding, aren't you?
I know.
You're serious?
I think she has mentioned it to me a time
Oh
or time.
man, that reminds me. One of Bob Mann's. Bob was my attorney and my partner in the Bijou early on.
Yeah, sure.
Bob's out in Colorado now, but
Bijou Theater, which was in Westport.
yeah, in Westport.
Home
back
of the
in
Dick and
70s.
J Friday morning radio broadcast.
Home of the Friday morning Dick and J
Where
radio
I still
broadcast.
have guys come up to me in the supermarket and say, "I skipped school on Friday mornings and came down there."
Oh, you're kidding!
Yeah.
You're kidding! Wow,
Quite a
that's,
show,
That's,
yeah.
that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
What about
Wonderful.
the Bijou? Anything else about the Bijou?
Oh, the Bijou was oh man, fabulous little theater. Never made a penny there, of course not.
Mm-hmm.
But it was essentially a retro house. We would print up calendars and we would book films in advance, and all the John Waters films and the Fellini films and all these little kitschy art films that wouldn't play anyplace else. We would play them there at the Bijou. But the Bijou's what really got the Bijou on the map was a film called the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which,
Oh,
as you
yeah.
guys know, the
Sure.
first really primal screen movie. Right there. It was playing in Boston and Austin at the time. I seem to remember that rhyme, Boston and Austin. And I was thinking, you know what, man, if we can put this in here and we can play it, we can build it up like they're doing. And I told everybody we're going to be playing this thing for 5 years. No one believed me. We put it in there. We played it for I think 10. Every Friday and Saturday at 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock, because we only seated 104, a little mini theater, small little thing. But it brought memories to people. I still, not as often as I used to, but run into people that saw it there, and it was actually a life-changing experience. There was this one guy named Kim, I forget his last name. Kim told me, he said, "Rocky saved my life." He said, I was in Westport this one night, said I was just walking down the street, I was getting ready to end it all. Man, my life is, I'm just ready to end it all. And he said, this pretty lady came out, and this Tyson was doing this dance, the time warp, she called it. Said, come on in, watch this movie. So I went in there and sat down. There was so much love in there, everybody coming together. So I sat through the entire thing, and I really, it gave me a reason to live. Wow. So I've been every weekend since then, never missed a weekend for it. That was Kim. That was Rocky. Yeah.
Holy cow. And that guy today owns Amazon.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Probably. Hey, tell me about these movie families around the Kansas City area. There's a lot of them,
yes,
right?
yes. Well, the Durwoods and the Dickinsons are two of the older ones that just immediately come to mind. And you're familiar with the fact that AMC Theaters, American Multi-Cinema Theaters, which was Durwood Theaters originally, is now the largest theater circuit in the world. Over 11,000 screens in over 1,000 locations around the world. I mean,
internationally owned with, I think, the Chinese company.
Yeah, a company called Wanda Dalian is the primary owner of it, but you can also, the stock is still available on it too, although it's down to like $8 and something today, which is a pretty big drop. But yeah, Stan Durwood and Dick Durwood, it was their father who really started the whole thing going. But they focused primarily on downtown Kansas City. So back in 1969, when I was transferred here with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer as their branch manager, they only had theaters that I recall downtown, except they might have opened the Ward Parkway, which was theoretically the first twin in the world, theoretically, and we hope that it was. And later the Metro 4, the first 4-screen theater. But they had like the Town Theater downtown, the Roxy, the Capri, the Empire. The Empire, I think, was called something else at the time. I don't remember. But Stan Durwood was one of these characters that one does not forget very easily.
No,
he only
was
died.
Something else.
He had some fabulous ideals for downtown, which have finally reached a lot of his realization now. I mean, he was the guy back there that wanted to create that critical heat downtown that we're now enjoying and experiencing.
Power and Light District was actually his concept.
It was.
I mean, in general terms.
Entertainment, I forget what they were calling things back then. But Stan did some great things. And I have grown to respect him more. My business dealings with him were more, he was the exhibitor, I was the distributor, so, we were okay, but never really connected in certain ways, although he always remembered your birthday.
That was his thing.
That facility for being able to remember your birthday.
Everybody's
met
birthday.
You once, man.
He met you once, he knew your birthday.
Wow.
He had some type of a mnemonic device that he used. I don't know what it was he did. But since Stan passed away, I've interviewed and done oral histories with some of his early employees, like Greg Hogue, who was with AMC 30, 40 years, George Kiefer, who came up with the name American Multi-Cinema for whatever combination of reasons, and other people, and they speak about how much Stan cared for his employees. And I'd never looked at him from that point of view. I'd been more just the fiduciary, not personal interrelationships and everything like that. And he was just loved by his people because he took care of them. But as far as the outside world goes, Stan was he would do or say anything he wanted to say. I remember when Alan Carr was in town getting some kind of an award. He was a gay director, producer, and Stan made some remark that today would get you excoriated, but he got away with it at the time. I remember when he was talking about the downtown development, the Star Times ran a little article and Stan says that what he'll do to control the crime is he'll put snipers up on the roofs. And I was thinking, oh my God, you can't do that, Stan. You can't promise that. Never heard anything more about it. So he was a fascinating guy. And his brother Dick is still alive.
Yeah.
And Butch and I worked with Dick. Dick owned a little 8-screen theater up in St. Joe. Called the Plaza Theater, and Butch and I operated that theater for him for a few years till he sold the real estate recently. But the Durwood family, and of course his
Dick had some unusual sport coats. I remember that.
He dressed fairly loudly. Yes, he did. He did. Big Madras Prince, you're probably referring to. I've seen some photographs of him. But the Durwood family, of course, Glenn Dickinson's family, the Dickinson Theaters here, and then his sons Wood Dickinson and Kent Dickinson also got involved.
I grew up going to that one in Mission, and the little screener.
The Dickinson in
they
Mission?
had a screener there, and then they had the big theater there. The regular theater. The screener was across the street. They had the private screenings.
Okay.
Or Yeah.
I don't even remember that private screenings. But but the Dickinson Theaters for many years operated some of the best theaters around. Their Glenwood was the theater of choice for many, many years.
Yeah.
They sold out to a buddy of mine, Ron Horton, quite a few years ago, or actually they sold out to John Hartley, and Ron was a small shareholder, and then he ended up buying it. But the company that is really making waves right now, other than AMC, is B&B Theaters. You're talking about a bunch of bright, sharp, young people who are really doing some good things, man. They are building theaters that are competitive with any theaters in the world. Right here in Kansas City.
Up in Liberty. Saw the movie last week.
What'd you think?
I thought it was pretty good.
I thought it was delightful.
I thought it was a cute, good-feeling little movie.
Yes.
But anyway, the theater is wonderful. I've met the people, and they got the bar up there and the jazz nights and all kinds of stuff.
Is that a local company?
It is Liberty, Missouri.
Yeah.
It was two companies that went together. Elmer Bills outside of Salisbury, Missouri, owned several little small theaters, and then Sterling Bagby in the Kansas area owned several little theaters. And Sterling's son, Bob Bagby, is the guy who's president of the company, and his son, Sterling's grandson, Brock, is also the guy kind of in charge of marketing. Mm-hmm. And then Brittany and Bobby Bagby, Bob's daughters, are very much involved in the company. Yeah. So it's a family company, but they've gone from 20, 30, 40 screens to several hundred screens.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe some people listening haven't been. Tell me a little bit about what the unique attributes are.
Well, every theater has those comfortable seats where you automatically lay back, and they're heated, and you can order the food and the drink, and it's just a nice, good, clean place to go. A variety of different theaters. I think they've got one of their theaters that has the atmospheric stuff going on.
Yeah, the 4D theaters.
Yeah,
they've got two or three like that.
Uh-huh.
And they've also got, when they're building their newer theaters, they'll have an auditorium that's specifically geared for entertaining young kids prior to the movie.
Oh, yeah.
So they've got all these little devices,
little play area,
things to show on.
Yeah, yeah.
And
they do a good job.
B&B, we're really proud of what those guys are doing.
Do they own the Twin Drive-In Theater now also?
Well, they lease the Twin Drive-In Theater.
They lease it? Okay.
Yeah. I booked it for about 25 years.
Talk to me about drive-ins around the area here.
Well,
let's mention some. I remember Highway 40, Hart Drive-In,
Leewood.
Help me out. The Fairyland.
Yeah.
There was so many drive-in theaters around this area for a while.
Well, let me give you just a couple of little comments then, if that's okay. Okay, the Fairyland Twin Theater. Okay, that was operated by the Finkelstein family, although the Brancatos were owners of a good chunk of it. Myron Finkelstein was the manager of the thing, and Myron was the one who did the booking and buying. And what happened was later in the 70s, because of their demographic audience there, in these two screens, they would have one screen, it would be some type of kung fu fighting type thing. They were really big back then. The other screen would be a so-called soft X film, the sexy stories, not hardcore, but soft X.
Sure.
So Myron came in one day and he said, I got so tired of people asking me, which screen is it going to be on? He said, I put up two signs over, one on each screen. The one said sex, the other said violence. They don't ask me anymore. They just go in sex and violence. That was the 63rd Street. The Highway 40 drive-in. A couple of guys we hadn't mentioned, Lou Vaughn and Martin Stone. Mm-hmm. Lou Vaughn and Martin Stone, again, two of the nicest, most creative people that this town has seen. And back in the late 60s, they would have gotten together and built their first drive-in, the I-70, which would have gone Hammers to Tong up against the Hart drive-in and the 63rd Street drive-in.
Yeah.
But it was a success immediately. Shortly after, they built the Twin Drive-In in Independence. Then they built the State Twin Drive-In in Kansas City, Kansas. Then they built the North Twin Drive-In up in North Kansas City.
What era was all this building going on?
In the 70s.
70, okay.
And then the South Twin Drive-In in Olathe, which is now where the Studio Theater is located, as a matter of fact. So they bought the Lake Park Twin. So they dominated the drive-in business here, although you also had the I-35 Clayco Drive-In.
Well, Clayco, I had Claycomo up there,
yes.
Or the Clayco. That's what I always went to. I grew up in that area.
What about the Hilltop Drive-In in Gashland?
Oh,
Remember
yeah,
that one?
Hilltop, yeah.
Okay. The Riverside Drive-In.
I remember Riverside was always the one
Yeah.
where, you're going to the Riverside. I know what's going on there.
That was a Commonwealth Theaters building, and which was at the time in the 70s when Poseger was their director of marketing and advertising. They were one of the largest theater circuits in the country. They were the largest drive-in theater circuit in the country, in mostly just small towns in numbers wise. So, yeah, we've got Commonwealth Theaters. Richard O'Rear was chairman and head of Commonwealth for many years. Fabulous company. They were solid as a rock. Yeah, good.
What do you think about what Butch has done down in North Kansas City with his place
Butch who?
down there?
I'm sorry.
That Butch guy in the next office.
Oh,
over
the
here.
Rigby guy.
Yeah.
Hey, he's but Butch is one of my dearest friends. He's like a kid brother almost, and he came up with the idea of the Screenland. Let me tell you how. Okay. The Screenland restaurant, the Screenland Cafe, was located at 18th and Wyandotte. It was the heart of Film Row.
Okay.
Martin Stone and Sylvia Stone owned it. Okay, Martin was Mid-America Theaters. Okay, in addition to the drive-ins, they also built the Blue Ridge, the Seville, the Chateau, the Truman Corners, the Watts Mill Theater in Heath, Ohio, and a couple other locations. So they were indoor and outdoor. But Martin and Sylvia had owned the little Screenland Cafe there, and before Butch took that name and protected it, he asked Sylvia Stone if it was okay if they use their name, and I've always respected him for that. But Butch he's done a great job in again playing films that appeal to a particular market, just like Jerry Harrington has done at the Tivoli, which we are still regretting the demise of the Tivoli Theater and always will as far as that goes.
Well, we owe him a lot for fighting that battle for a long time.
Absolutely.
Bringing all those.
Absolutely. And of course, Jerry started in the Bijou Theater, working for my wife Summer after I had left Kansas City in 1981. And then took over the lease and renamed it the Tivoli. And then when the Manor Square 3-screen theater across the street opened up, he moved his Tivoli operations into there and operated them both for a while. But Butch did a great job there at 17th and Washington. And, his idea of using the fat chairs, the recliners, and everything. I know that the AMC people sent people down to just examine some of his buildings.
Sure.
And now he's not involved on a day-to-day basis. He still owns it, of course, but he's got two great guys who are operating his Armour situation and Crossroads situation.
Okay.
Adam is just terrific. Yeah. Adam and Brent, great people, and boy, they are always full of ideas. But yeah, we're really proud that Screenland Theaters is here. I'd love to see Butch continue to try to expand his brand. It's just that he's got so much on his plate right now with all the real estate that he's developing like this.
He's a busy guy.
It's keeping really busy.
And this is a beautiful building.
Really is, yeah. Where we are, 601 East, 63rd Street.
More to come, I guess, east of here.
Yes, absolutely. Well, plus, other buildings around the city that he is
I've got to ask this here.
Sure.
I don't know if I dreamt this or not, but maybe you can verify it. Seems like I was driving down in central Missouri at one point on a highway, and I saw a movie theater set up that was circular, and the cars would pull up to a small screen, and there was a projector in the middle that projected to all the screens, and it was right in front of your car. Did that ever exist, or did I dream that?
No, you did not dream that. And they played mostly, actually, he started in Joplin. I forget the name of it, the Circle something like that.
Yeah.
Not Circle Jerk, but the Circle something drive-ins. Yeah. And he would play Soft X films in those, and everybody had their own little individual screen.
In front of the car.
For several years, right there in the car.
Kidding.
Yeah.
And this would have been in the early 70s, early
So
to
much
mid-70s.
nicer than Ray's Playpen screen.
Hey, let me tell you, Ray's Playpen, when I hear that name, I think of Jay, because Jay had a small bit in 69 Minutes.
Jay Cooper, yeah.
Jay Cooper, where he walked out of there with an inflated love doll and got on the bus, and as I recall, he was demonstrating some of the orifices or something on that love doll. So you say Ray's Playpen, that's the last time I was in the place, too.
All right, let's jump in there for a minute.
Yeah.
Who owned and booked the Dove and the Old Chelsea theaters?
Oh, boy. I don't.
That wasn't you.
Oh no!
Yeah.
No. They were hardcore. I did not get involved in hardcore.
Okay.
The soft X's, as we called them,
Sure.
yes, again, swinging cheerleaders type, and the soft X's like that. But the hardcore stuff was, I didn't want the onus that was still
Yeah.
involved with at the time. But of course, I knew the people. I just don't remember the names of
Okay.
the owners. Although one of the guys that worked with me at Thomas and Shelp Films later went to work in one of these, and I remember him telling me a story about taking the print of Deep Throat and putting it in a big bucket of water to destroy it. That was
Seems
Ken
like
Hurd.
those soft X's you're talking
Yeah.
about ran forever
Yeah.
because they would advertise these in the Star,
Yes.
Emmanuel or whatever,
Yes.
and you would just see perennially. You just see these ads for the same film. They really, they must have made bank or something.
Those soft X's we did well on. We couldn't play them in a whole lot of theaters, but we did well on them. And incidentally, there was a lady in the who had an X-rated theater locating in the Union Station. I'm trying to remember her name. I've even got a couple of ads from it. So you might not know that they used to play X-rated films in the Union Station right there in the main thing. They had a little
Wow, and they had a theater there too.
Yeah,
Circle
yeah, that
Theater.
was it. I don't know if it's Circle, but there was a theater in there that played the X films. The soft X
Wow.
anyway stuff.
Yeah.
And could I jump back one quick minute and
Sure.
tell you about, because this is actually in response to Loy's question about how I got from Florida maybe back into the business. Okay, after I was totally wiped out and spent what money I had left down in Key West, I got a call from my daughter that an old buddy of mine who had worked with Roger Corman for years had a really good gig running an independent company out of New York City, and he wanted to talk to me about giving me a job to get back in the business. And of course I was like, God, at this point I got to do something. So I jumped in this pickup truck that I had, a little camper on the back, and I put all my fishing supplies, everything that was left over that I had, on top of it like Beverly Hillbillies and inside that thing, and started the drive from Florida all around up through to Los Angeles to talk to Frank about going to work for him in New York City, where the home office was. This company called Almy Pictures that had bought Cinema 5 Releasing and Libra Films, the two most prestigious independent art type film operations in the country, and they own them. So I jumped in my pickup and started that long drive. I ran out of money about in Mobile, Alabama, so I started trading stuff out of the back of the truck for gas and sandwiches. I'd look for the little back door like service stations that that I knew I could get away with it and trade the stuff. So I made it to Memphis where I had family, and then they stocked me for enough to get to Kansas City where I had family, and they stocked me enough to start the drive from Kansas City on over to LA. So here I'm motivating that this truck still loaded down with everything that I had left, because all my good stuff I'd sold or hawked, prior to that. So I got in Vegas and said, I'm going to splurge. So found this little motel outside of Vegas, checked in there for a night instead of sleeping in the truck. And they have one of these TV sets in there where you put the quarters in, for 15 minutes. So I watched television for a little while and then continued my trip to LA. Made it to LA. Met with Frank like the morning after I got there. Made a deal with him. He loaned me $1,000 to buy a sport jacket and some slacks and shoes because I was in my fishing regalia. That's all I owned at the time. And got me a ticket to fly to New York. So I had to put my truck with everything left in storage there in LA. So flew to New York, and the company put me up in a really nice apartment there, a really, really nice apartment. It's in the gentrified area of Hell's Kitchen that they call Clinton, or they did 30, 40 years ago, whenever it was. Okay, so here I am suddenly in New York City. The week before I was fishing in Key West, 2 weeks
with
before,
your
whatever.
bait shop blown in the bag.
So here I am in New York City with this gig as VP, General Sales Manager, USA, Canada, Acquisition, Distribution, Production, all that crap. And then a week after I got in New York City, there was this huge convention going on called Show West in Las Vegas. So the company flew me to Vegas, a suite at the MGM Grand. So in a period of 2 weeks, I went from that quarter machine in that little place to a suite at the MGM Grand, and that's exactly maybe encapsulates my life in a nutshell.
Oh, wow.
It's been just kind of like that. And you know what? I mean, whether you're up or down, you're in or out, as long as you're alive
surfing
and
life,
your brain's
aren't you?
working, man,
Surfing
nothing
life.
else matters. Nothing else matters.
That is phenomenal.
But I love
Wow.
that trip. Love that trip. Yeah.
What's the film industry like today? What's going on in there? Technology and things. I think we talked about that a little bit.
Man, double, boiling trouble. I mean, it's just
No projectionist really around anymore.
I think the union is called the IATSC, the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees. They were the in fact, I had to contact them to find out some stuff about Frankie. I don't know that they have any. I think he was the last living union projectionist in this part of the country, although maybe in Chicago and New York, some of the other markets, they might have one or two. But no, essentially, your employees have to operate that equipment because
they are merging with the elevator operators union. Because you've got to keep that critical mass.
Of course, what's happening this year, that's what's happening. There's so many things happening on so many levels, but what Disney is doing in entering into their streaming, and what Warner Brothers doing entering into their streaming, what Universal will be doing, what Amazon and Apple are doing, I'd say that things are in a state of not uproar. Yeah, a state of uncertainty is what it boils down to.
Right.
Now, a buddy of mine in Wichita, Bill Warren, builds the finest, most luxurious theaters in the world. And I'll defend that statement. In the world. He sold his circuit a couple of years ago to Regal, but he is next in 2 weeks. He's opening his new 12-screen, ultra luxurious, marble, etched glass, anything the best that money can buy outside of Oklahoma City again, in Midwest City.
Wow.
But there are still people building theaters, and the big circuits are still converting the old sloped auditoriums to, of course, the fat chairs, the food, and the drink, and that's just B&B is really on the leading forefront of coming up with other innovative ideas, like the theater they opened up an hour recently. I know has a bowling alley attached to it, and they're doing outreaches to make things more regional than just to see a moving image.
I'm still waiting for the day when they have walls all around you, floor, sides, ceiling. It's all projected.
Yeah, they stick glasses on you, Dick.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Is that 3D?
Yeah, that's virtual reality.
Oh, I gotcha. Oh, that's it. Yeah. Okay.
And of course, 3D is really in the midst of a huge demise right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's people just aren't buying that at the movie theaters. We'll usually have one show a day in 3D for the first week and then drop it. But
I'm waiting for 4D to come out.
4D.
4D is out.
That's what they're calling something.
That's what they're calling those seats you were referring
to
that move like that and splash stuff in.
But do they have people outside making sound effects?
Oh, there you go.
That's what we need.
You know what? It occurred
Give
to me.
voiceover actors a job again.
Oh, there you go. Okay, yeah, okay.
Occurred to you?
You're a particular petard there. Is that really how you make your living, Loy? I mean, is voiceovers more now? Is that really what you do?
Well, I've been doing that for 20 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, still with William Morris.
Yeah.
Endeavor. Same wonderful agent.
Wow. Really cool. Yeah. Sounds like it leads to good stuff then.
Well, it's it's a little bit related to the industry you've.
Of course it is.
With. I mean, you know a lot of folks in that business, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, could we talk about the Boulevard drive-in?
Sure.
Because we passed that up when we were talking about drive-ins.
Sure.
There's you have a story about Ruby.
Oh, okay. Boulevard Drive-In is located adjacent to Turkey Creek. Over the years, it once or twice annually, they will flood, and the water will, flood. By that, inundate the concession area so that it takes a boat to get out there. It has been fixed now. Now they have built it up so that that hasn't happened. But quite a few years ago, after the double feature ends, the employees go out to the field and pick the field, they call it. Pick up the popcorn boxes and stuff like that. So Ruby was the one doing the Boulevard Drive-In this one particular night. This was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning after everything had ended, and the rain started coming in. It had rained the day really bad before too, and the rain started coming in there. So she ended up going into the concession stand area so that she could stand up on stuff and get out of the water. She immediately called Wes Neal and said, "I am stuck in the concession stand. I can't get out. It's flooding. Come get me." Wes, somehow or another, ended up with a boat and took the boat out to the concession stand area. Okay, at that time the water had risen to such a level that she had climbed up on the glass concession thing and was standing on one of these milk cartons like this, and the water was still up past her waist. So she was sitting there waiting for that little boat to come paddling out there. It came paddling out, and the water started dropping enough so that she splashed out of the drive-in, out of the concession area to the boat. So they grabbed her, pulled her up into the boat. She slid right back in the water. They grabbed her the second time to pull her up in the boat. They couldn't keep her in the boat, back in the water. The third time, she finally stayed in the boat. What had happened was the coconut oil had floated to the surface and coated her like a greased pig.
Oh my.
But the bottom line is, and they said, well, Ruby, weren't you afraid, being stranded like that? And she said, no, I knew Wes was going to come get me.
No,
She had that much confidence in him, and she was right, he did.
So this thing is one of the last remaining
single screen drive-ins there's around 350 locations nationally, but you've got to have the economy of scale. If you don't have it operating just about any business anymore, it's just difficult. That's why you see 4-screen and 6-screen drive-ins are the ones that do the most business. So yes, the Boulevard, it's because of the family, the Neal family, that has just insisted on keeping that swap and shop going every Saturday and Sunday, and because Wes Neal loves that drive-in mentality. He loves
91 right now at the time of this
he is 91
taping,
years young, as a matter of fact, and he still gets out there all the time. Now his grandson Brian really is the operator and the runner of the thing there. He and his wife Clarissa, and a lot of family employees. But quite frankly, it's by focusing on the family that's allowed us to keep that drive-in viable and strong. And 2 weeks ago, on our opening weekend of Toy Story and Aladdin, we set a new house record for that drive-in. That drive-in is almost 70 years old. We had the biggest weekend in history.
Wow.
2 weekends ago. So
that's wild. How do people find out about what's going on there? What is that? Boulevard Drive-In?
BoulevardDrive-In.com. Like us on Facebook. Visit our website. Yes.
And you have some involvement with that?
I get a small piece of the box office because I program it. I'm the one who determines what movies are going to play.
Okay.
I do the negotiations on a given Monday.
Sure.
This Monday I was fighting with Disney actually on next week when we open Lion King, because they want me to keep Toy Story with it, but I'm not going to because we've played it. We'll have been for 4 weeks already. We've got a finite audience there. We're not a $10 million metro area population here. So, but yeah, that's what I do. I program it. I book it as such.
Well, will you apologize to Wes for me about the thing with Tommy Micah's '57 Chevy convertible?
I will.
The trunk, because we all got in the trunk.
I think he's got that license plate number of that particular car.
You could send him a couple bucks now.
I guess I could.
But you should go there some evening. Brian, his grandson, has really done some innovative things. But
that's first theater I went to where you could listen on FM.
Yeah, it was the first theater in the world, as far as we know, the first drive-in theater to install that digital sound. And I know we're the first drive-in in the world to install 4K digital projection.
Yeah.
The other drive-ins had 2K, but he did this. But what he also did was he invested in a camera. So before the movies play, you got all these kids running around waiting for this and that, and they bring the camera out and they film the kids doing this and that, and it shows up on the screen. So the parents are in the car, they're watching their kids on this 100-foot screen.
I love it.
It's just great ideas.
It's a long time since we used to take the spotlights on the side of our car and shine them up on the screen.
Now it would be laser pointers.
Yeah,
we don't want that either. But
wow.
But the Boulevard perseveres, man. It does.
That's great.
They do a great job.
Love to see that thing still, that anachronistic thing still thriving. It's wonderful.
Yes,
Can't believe that the same guy is still alive.
Yeah, still doing it, yeah. What a bunch of stories. Before we leave, let's get into Searching for Summer, the new book that's out that Brandy did. Tell us a bit about that.
Okay, a lady named Ann Tizon Spry, who does personal memoirs, had arranged to have a gentleman come out and check her house for the insulation, and Brandy's husband does that. So he was working there at Ann's house, and Brandy happened to be with him on one of the gigs and came in and introduced them. And when Ann heard that this is Brandy Shipp, who was the daughter of Summer Shipp, she had followed the thing real closely. She couldn't believe it because she had always been interested in the story. And bottom line is, that was about 3 or 4 years ago. But and Brandy had been approached by other people to do a book, but there just wasn't any. I mean, she was interested, but not interested. But Anne was just such a delightful lady and so sincere. And Andy and Brandy and Anne co-wrote it. Anne did most of the actual writing, but Brandy set up the interviews and did a lot of that background information. A small portion of it's going to be donated to the Q, which looks for missing persons and everything.
Yeah.
And it's a story essentially to let people know that Summer Shipp was a lot more than just a young woman, a woman who was grabbed and killed, There's a lot more to her than that. And the book is really, it's like an homage to her friends and associates, a lot of little anecdotes and stories, different people talking about their memories of Summer, a lot of photographs, and they do cover the trials and everything like that. But
Good.
it was...
She was really, I knew Summer quite well.
Yeah, that's right,
She was,
didn't you?
I knew her through the
She's
Bijou
fantastic.
also, yeah. Back
and the
Sweet
Bijou had the wonderful, the posters with all the schedule, and I actually did those for a few years for Summer.
Did
yeah,
you? I didn't
that
know
was
that.
a paste-up
The
nightmare.
calendars.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, back
I'll
in
be
the old
dead
days
now.
with the X-Acto
Right,
knives and
I
the
see that
spray
big
mount.
Bijou at the top
Oh,
of the yeah, absolutely.
But she was a lovely, lovely lady.
She was. She absolutely was. She was. That's one of those unfortunate things that happens, and we just. But you know what? The upshot, one of the many, many upshots. There are so many wonderful people in this town, in this city, in this area. You just can't believe all of the help and the assistance that Brandy and the family was given during those dark days. It
Sure,
was,
yeah.
Just
And
marvelous,
you can
wonderful
get the book
stuff.
on Amazon, and I think
Amazon and other
different
places.
yeah.
I'm sure that Ann will be placing them in bookstores around here, Bibliomania and places.
Anything we haven't talked about that is
Oh,
still
Lord.
rattling around in your brain that needs to be told?
I tell you what, give me one quick second. Oh,
Sure.
yes. Tressie Sounders. Tressie Sounders in 1922 was a maid at 5500 Ward Parkway. Now that's the place that Wade Williams owned that for a few years. Now the lawyers, I forget their name on it. At the time in 1922, when she was a maid at that address, it was owned by Mac Kemper. Obviously, it was a huge thing, as you know, back then. She directed and produced the first feature ever directed and produced by a black female filmmaker in the United States of America.
Really?
Wow.
Tressie Sounders. Her real name was Teresa Ann Sounders. She was 25 years old. She was born in 1897. That's right, in Frankfort, Kansas. Her family had been part of the diaspora of a lot of black people leaving Kentucky and other places and coming back further south. And her mother got pregnant along the way, and she delivered a baby there in Frankfort, Kansas. They weren't able to take care of the baby, so they adopted this baby out to another black family to raise her as their own. When Tressie was 12 years old, attending church, her birth parents and family descended upon the church and grabbed her, took her away, from what I hear, forcefully, and said, "She's our daughter. We want her back." Okay, it was a huge cause celeb in the black community, as you can imagine. Again, this would have been, if she was 12, then that would have been, 9? Yeah, 1909. It went to court, and the custodial rights were given back to her birth parents. So that's who she graduated from school with. And she was a little bit behind. Okay, when she was in 1918, she would have moved to Kansas City. Bottom line is, here she is, 25 years old, a maid, black, Kansas City, Missouri. At that time, Walt Disney had 2 or 3 years earlier gone out to the coast to work with his brother. At that time, our jazz scene, our blues scene, the music scene here was going, dance, you name it. And this film was called A Mother's Error. And I'm convinced there are no copies of it that anyone has been able to find yet. But there was an ad in Billboard magazine talking about the movie, and there's corroboration on even Wikipedia. If you go there, you'll see Tressie Sounders usually given credit for being the first black female filmmaker. Okay, from there, in the later 20s, she moved to L.A. and supposedly to get maybe involved with the black filmmaking community there, but it never happened. She ended up living in San Francisco as a maid for the rest of her years, died at the age of 98 years old. She had saved money to have her body sent back to Frankfort, Kansas and buried. So I took my shooters, the Kelly boys, to Frankfurt about a year ago, and we interviewed the local historian there who's been researching her and other people, and talked to some other people in Kansas. She's never been recognized even in the state of Kansas, but I ran into Vicki Henley and some other people there who we're going to be doing something about that. And we're going to get her some notoriety, because people should know that Kansas City has produced these people that are, again, iconic figures with a moving image that no one's ever heard of.
Wow.
But that's Tressie Sounders.
Sounders.
There was a huge black community making films back then. There was a doctor, I forget his name. There was another lady, Maria P. Williams, who produced and directed a film in 1923, the year after hers. Kansas City is just full of history if you start digging down into it. It's amazing. And there's a lot more history being made. We've got a fabulous, fabulous lady who runs our film commission here, Stephanie Scuffham. Have you ever met her?
No.
Oh, then you must. She is an asset this city desperately needs to help bring more production into the area. And we've got a great independent production community that's been developing here. You guys know, because, I mean, you're peripheral to everything going on that involves entertainment.
Well, I know that the tax deals that they come up with do make a big impact.
Huge.
Because when I was in LA,
yeah,
I know that a lot of people were coming here for a while, and then it runs hot and cold depending upon what the tax incentives are.
Yes,
among
absolutely.
other things, and then the union status and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So what's the scene like right now? How is it working out?
It's working out lousily when it comes to tax incentives. You know, we had something going for the state to bring back, I forget how they were going to structure it, but I'm not certain whether that passed or not. I don't know what the latest is on that. The city itself has a really small fund that Stephanie can use for small independent things. But, you know, states like Georgia and Louisiana, man, they've just, they spend tens of millions of dollars. Of course, Georgia's having some problems right now, so maybe that'll benefit other people. And, of course, Canada's always been, as you know, a great place for filmmaking. They're not making quite as many of these big films in L.A. as they used to. It just ain't working that way.
Give me a few star stories. Stars you've met, things you've dealt with.
Well, you know what? Showarama. The Showarama convention was approximately 1958 to 83, approximately 25 years. It was the largest theatrical convention in the country. Several thousand people would come. All the top stars would come. Okay, I remember it started out at the Mulebach and then moved to the Crown Center. And I think that was the last home for it. But I remember standing back with a group of people and a young Jack Nicholson. This had been, again, 40 years ago. Wearing blue jeans, sport jacket, white shirt and tie, you know, just standing there and starting to look nervous, starting to sweat. And finally they were getting ready to call him to come up to the dais there so he can get his award. And he was standing there, he's saying, you know, what am I supposed to say to these people? You know, what should I say? You know, and someone said, you know, just thank them and tell them you're glad to be here and you appreciate it, you know, that's all. So he's sweating doing this and that. Finally, they called his name and he starts walking. And you remember the movie where Kevin Spacey at the end of it starts walking, right? Seven, I think. No, The Usual Suspects.
Okay.
Well, here's the bottom line. Okay, he's walking through the crowd there, through the tables to go up there, and as he takes every step, man, he starts becoming Jack Nicholson. And by the time he's up there in front of the mic, man, he's, you know, looking around with that look on his face like that, and I forget what he says, but everybody was like ooh and ahhing, and he was perfectly comfortable and at ease, and that was Nicholson. Okay, now one of the funniest ones was give me a second here. George Burns, and George was old even then, man, real old. But we had set up a deal with one of the model agencies, either 50 or 100 models in swimming suits, to escort him into the banquet room, the banquet space. So here he comes in with all these pretty women around there, and he's standing up there at the mic with a cigar like this, you know, looking around like that, and looking at those women, and he says, you know, I don't know how to say this, but half of you are going to be disappointed tonight. And the audience absolutely fell out of their chairs. They absolutely loved it.
That's funny. What a guy.
Another one. Jack Lemmon, and I didn't really get to spend much time with him, but some of the other people did. one of the nicest guys they'd ever met in just every level, they said. But this particular angle was told me by someone whose last name is Durwood. I won't tell you his first name. And he was there. So here's what happened. She was, Dianna Ross was sitting up there on the dais next to Jack Lemmon. They both had movies in for whatever it was. I forget what they were at the time. So in the middle of the banquet, Jack Lemmon, Dianna Ross stands up and politely walks around back there and sits down at one of the tables in front that had an empty chair, and I think that Dick was there. And after the event was over, whoever it was, asked her, why did you leave in the middle of that like that? And she said, well, Mr. Lemon had been drinking a whole lot, and he needed to urinate, and he didn't want to leave, so he took the wine glass and he filled it and set it down on the floor, and I didn't want to stay there.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Yeah.
Dick, I thought that was your trick.
Loy, we've learned something today.
You thought you had invented that, eh? Yeah, as they say.
Wow.
Now, Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman.
Paul, yeah.
Delightful people. At the time that I was involved in picking them up or taking them to their suite, and the suite at the Crown Center on the top floor, you guys probably know it. You got, and I can't believe I remember 45 years later, but you got the State Suite, the Plaza Suite, the Royal Suite, the Presidential Suite. Those were the four big money ones. I would always get, because I thought I was such a big shot, I would always get the State Suite or the Plaza Suite. Those were my favorite ones, okay. So during this convention, I mean, of course, I was representing so many of these independent companies that I was really, really busy during that. But so the place was always full, and and Clint Eastwood used to come up there at least a couple of different nights. I remember him coming up there and hanging around. But nice fella, and give me a second. Oh, okay, Joanne Woodward. She would fly. Paul Newman would not fly at the time, for whatever reason. So he took a train in and she flew in. But they had it scheduled so that we picked her up at the airport and then came to the train station and picked him up, took him into the hotel. And when they walked into whatever suite it was we had for him, I remember both of them just stopping and looking around and saying, you didn't have to do anything like this for us. This is way too nice. My job was keeping Coors beer in demand in the refrigerator up there, because he was a big Coors beer drinker. But there were so many stars that came in, and this was the big deal back in the '70s. And let me tell you, quick Wolfman Jack. There was a movie called Hanging on a Star that I was going to be handling in the Midwest. Wolfman starred in it, so we brought him in for this deal. And I went with the limo to pick him up. Back then, when you took the limo to the airport, they had a big Showarama banner on the side. We had a motorcycle cop in front, a motorcycle cop behind, pulling over traffic to get to the airport to pick these people up. I mean, I can't even imagine something like that.
I'm from Hollywood. Pull over.
And we would use mostly off-duty cops as the limo drivers and bike drivers and everything. So the Wolfman came on out. He got in the back of the car and he reached in his pocket to pull out a number to light up. And we said, "Oh no, we've got an off-duty cop driving here." And he said, "I ain't leaving until you get another driver." So I took the driver for a walk, and I always carried extra $50 bills around to tip as necessary. You guys know how that can go. So I gave him a $50 bill and said, "Man, I apologize, but can you get one of your other drivers that's not a cop to come out?" We had to wait 20 or 30 minutes, but finally another driver came out, got in the car, and Wolfman, okay, thank God.
Don't deny the Wolfman his reefer.
The movie was held up and it never even went into release for some legal problems, lawsuits back and forth. I don't remember, but that was my buddy Jerry Jones, Radio
What city
Jones.
am I in? Wowie.
My buddy Jerry Jones. When you see, if you ever get bored enough to look at that little doc called The Film Peddler.
Yeah.
Jerry's talking about, he worked on Tunnel Vision with me and some of the movies that I handle, but he's got a great, the way he describes Wolfman is just priceless,
man.
like that.
Gosh.
Yeah, I mean,
Cool
all the stars
experiences.
that you ever heard of would have been out there.
Wow.
So,
All right.
As far as Pharaoh, I just have to put in a plug for the Pharaoh Theater,
the Pharaoh
Cinema,
Independence
on the square there. You have to hand it. To the folks there, the McLeans, Cindy and Ken, who continue to operate the square there on such a high level.
A lot of good businesses.
And that little 4-screen theater is a little dollhouse. It's kind of the old-fashioned neighborhood type theater, but it's a marvelous addition to the square. And I've been booking it for 20 or 30 or 40 years officially.
They always have the new films in there, so you're doing a good job.
We do. Thank you very much for noticing.
All right, cool. All right.
Gentlemen.
Well,
Anything
what a
else?
fun conversation, I'll tell you. John?
I'm not even sure I can get out of my seat buckle here. I mean, this has been quite a wave of stories.
I didn't mean to develop it to a soliloquy, but
well, that's good.
You
You
invited
perfect.
it.
What a ride! What a ride!
You didn't slap me, man. And it's still going on. That's the fun thing, man. This is so fabulous to be to be an older gentleman, older fella, and still every day wake up, and just be. Wow, thankful, man.
Well, you're a real prize for
It's
Kansas
good.
City. I mean,
no. That's a super. No, thank you.
We got any film?
Too
There's a
many.
lot of film action here, and you've been in the center of it all. So.
I just.
Well, at least since
I've been
the
toiling
Nickelodeon.
Toiling in the vineyards, just like everybody else, but I've just been lucky to have a lot of really apt people that I've hooked up with.
Now, one other quick thing: the documentary things you're doing. Where can we see those? What's happening on those? Your historical stuff.
Okay, my initial perspective is purely doing it to save it, to save the information, to save the stories, to save the perspectives of these people who and forgive me for repeating that, who've toiled in that vineyard for so many years. So we've interviewed, I think, 8 or 10 different people. As far as the final presentation format, we're not really certain yet, but for certain, I did talk to Ann McPherson, who's an historian for here and there, and we want to be sure that this information, that these interviews, these oral histories that we're recording, will be available for research for people in the future who might be looking. What about AMC Theaters? How did that start? Or how did B&B? How did all this stuff come about? But also, we've got some fantastic short vignettes. People like. I saw a mention on one of you gentlemen's pages somewhere about Jody Rovick's sister that you knew, went to school with.
Right.
I think.
Janice,
Yeah, Janice. Jody, we talked to for about an hour here, got fantastic stories. People like George Kiefer, who worked with Stan in his early days, in his Ward Parkway days, in the creation of the circuit. People like Jack Posier, of course. Butch, even I've spoken to. He's the youngest one yet.
Even Butch?
Even Butch. Well, Butch has got some really good stories, man.
I'll bet he does.
Butch is. He's
We probably should have gotten you, Butch, and Jack in the same room and let the lies fly.
Well, now who's producing this? Is this you, or is there a group, or are there other people helping?
The Kelly boys, the guys, are the ones who are shooting it and who will end up editing it and doing everything. Again, we're looking at this as probably a 1.5, 2 year project, and we've done maybe 15 or 20% of the people that we want to do. So we're just gathering the background information is the bottom line. But we're saving these stories the same way that we've been saving all of these movie posters, 35 millimeter. I've got maybe 8,000 35 millimeter theatrical trailers. I've got an underground storage bin. But my wife has for years been saying, why? But as far as I'm concerned, it's treasure. It's not trash,
Well, John, thank you for such a great day of stories. This is wonderful.
Well, how kind of you to say so.
The one thing I want you to remember to let Loy and myself know is the next time there's a screening of 69 Minutes.
Yeah,
you know what? I will, and we will set something up.
All right,
for sure.
good.
Thanks,
a
John.
lot, gentlemen. I've enjoyed being able to reminisce there somewhat.
We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, well, here we are in the Dick and Loy editing suites, and thank you, John Shipp, for joining us. What great stories you have. We'll be back with more incredible people to talk to on Dick and Loy's Media and Marketing Mayhem. But what are you doing? No, you're not supposed to look around here. This is private stuff. No. Get away from that. That's not for you to see. Go back to your computer. Shut off your phone. Loy, sing us out of here.
You might love it, you might hate it. It's my favorite freaking show.